What's going on, everyone? So Jaylen Brown is an incredible young talent. He's still 26 years old. He's 6'6", 223, just absolute monster on both sides of the basketball. Might be one of, if not the best, just two-way players in the league. And this year, he has really just taken it up a notch. He's a guy giving you just under 27 a game. He's also giving you 7 rebounds and 4 assists, 1.5 steals, and just under half a block. This is a guy that can completely impact the game on both sides of the ball. He's a guy that you'd imagine is only going to improve, only going to get better. He is kind of the 1A to 1B of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Also, on top of that, he's a guy that has shown the ability to just completely take over games, close out games. He was one of the only guys that really showed up in the finals. I mean, Jason Tatum completely disappeared at times, and Jaylen Brown was putting up 20 points in the fourth quarter and just guarding the best guy on the other team and was just doing everything, trying to will his team to a championship. And when it comes to the Celtics, there are a lot of questions centered around Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown has recently made comments that has a lot of people curious onto what is going to happen with Jaylen Brown and the Celtics going forward. Now, obviously, they are a contender. In my opinion, they are one of 2 teams that I think are likely coming out of the East. I think they're one of 2 teams that very likely could win the championship this year. But again, if they don't, do the Celtics start looking in other directions? Does Jaylen Brown want out? And Jaylen Brown seems non-committal to the Boston Celtics. So we even have this report that came out after some comments that Jaylen Brown said about him just not being committed to the Celtics. Brown said that he's unsure he wants to be in a Boston jersey long term. I will stay where I'm needed and treated correctly. And this is something that has really sparked some curiosity and just conversation, right? Like, what is going to happen with Jaylen Brown? Now, they already offered Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. We got reports in the offseason when Kevin Durant requested that trade that the Celtics were willing to trade Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and 2 firsts for Kevin Durant. And Jaylen Brown was not very happy with that at that time. Now, one of the big reasons why the Celtics even considered doing that, because you got to imagine, why trade a 26-year-old rising star who has, a two-way player? Yes, it's Kevin Durant, but you have such a young contending team already. Why go trade one of the better two-way guys in the league at 26 for Kevin Durant when you could just stay pat and maybe use your assets to upgrade in other areas? But the big reason is because Jaylen Brown very likely could leave in 2 years. So Jaylen Brown is not going to sign an extension with the Boston Celtics during the season. It makes no sense. He actually makes more money the way that it is structured when it comes to extensions. He'll actually make more money if he refuses that, becomes a free agent, and then if he were to sign with the Celtics, then yes, the Celtics could give him, more money, and he would make a bigger contract. But he could also make more elsewhere if he didn't do an extension. So Jaylen Brown very likely could reach the point where it's like, I don't want to be here. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be the number one option. He wants to lead a team. He believes that he is just as good, if not better, than Jason Tatum. And I mean, there is a real argument. I think Jason Tatum is the better of the 2, but Jaylen Brown isn't no slouch. It's not like he's way far off. And so him being the leader of a team, or him being a guy that is kind of more of a face, could really be a reason for him to leave. I don't see him leaving for just any team. I don't see him leaving for a place that he just says, oh, I want to, I want to go to the Magic or something like that. Maybe he does, but I really think there is a real potential for him to go to the Lakers. Now, I have said this on numerous occasions. I said this in the off season and people kind of laughed and brushed it off. I recently said it in a live stream. The other day, I said that, hey, I think we were just kind of just shooting it. And I was like, I could really see Jaylen Brown potentially being a Laker in 2 years. And people were like, oh, that would be great. And just imagine that. Could you imagine our starting 5 post LeBron of D'Angelo Russell, Jaylen Brown, Jared Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis, and Rui Hachimura. That's insane. Or you could go Austin Reeves. You could even go something like you could go D'Lo, Reeves, Brown at the 3, then have Vanderbilt at the 4 and AD at the 5. You would have the best defensive team in the league, bar none. I mean, the Lakers are already number 1 with just Anthony Davis and Jared Vanderbilt. Imagine what they would be with Jaylen Brown. Like, they would be insane. And Jaylen Brown, after LeBron, Jaylen Brown would be the guy. Anthony Davis doesn't really want to be the guy. There's questions of if he can even be the guy. So if Jaylen Brown came to the Lakers, Jaylen Brown would be the guy, right? You'd have D'Lo, you'd have Reeves, you'd have Jaylen Brown, you'd have Rui Hachimura very likely. You could probably keep Dennis Schroeder, guys like that. This team would be just special. Also, you could even keep LeBron if you wanted to. I mean, you could even go a starting 5 of, say, D'Lo, Brown, LeBron, AD, like that kind of thing. Have like a team like that. It would get kind of tricky, and you'd kind of have to figure stuff out. Very likely, the Celtics would try to trade him before that could happen, before they end up losing him. But don't be shocked if, like, this offseason or going into next season, they end up trading him, because they're going to have to make a decision within the next year. Are they really willing to risk losing him for nothing? Because that could be a real potential. And so that could be something that we could see on the horizon. But the reason I bring up LeBron is because when Jaylen Brown, when he's available, LeBron will be a player option. He can actually opt out. If he wanted to, he could clear enough space to sign Jaylen Brown and then just sign like a 1+1 or something like that on a cheaper deal if he really wanted to. Will he? I don't know, but maybe. If you can get Jaylen Brown, he might look at it as like, man, if we can get Jaylen Brown, have D'Lo, me, Brown, and Davis, like, that's pretty good, right? And you'd still have Jared Vanderbilt. Again, that's pretty good, right? That's a really good starting 5. And so maybe, just maybe, he would consider that. But also, if the Lakers did have to come to a trade, there's always the possibility of like an Anthony Davis trade. I know a lot of people want to trade Anthony Davis. I'm not really big on trading Anthony Davis. I mean, the guy's 26-12 and the best defender in the league this year. He has the biggest defensive impact. Him and Giannis are basically 1A and 1B this year. Anthony Davis is leading the league in 30 and 15 games. Absolute monster. But health concerns are an issue. Him being a number 1 option, what is it going to look like post LeBron? And also, does Anthony Davis want to stay with the Lakers post LeBron? Right? Anthony Davis's timeline runs out too. So Anthony Davis in 2 years, he could end up leaving. So the Lakers might have to make a decision on Anthony Davis. So it could be something that is mutually beneficial. Like, right? Like, Anthony Davis doesn't really want to necessarily be or care to be the number 1 option. Like, him and Jason Tatum would be a very good pairing, right? And they have Time Lord, so he could just play the 4. Anthony Davis could get what he wants and play the 4 next to Robert Williams. So that could be beneficial for Anthony Davis. And there were even talks of him looking at the Celtics years ago. So maybe you work something like that. Would the Celtics be willing to give a package similar to Kevin Durant, right? Of like, say, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and instead of like multiple firsts, like 3 or 4 firsts, maybe just 1 first, or even just Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. That's not a bad option. The Lakers would have to find a center, a defensive center, somebody that could come in. But I mean, even like if you just remove the center position, right? And let's say post LeBron, if after LeBron, you have D'Angelo Russell, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. So you could have Marcus Smart play the 2 or the 1. D'Lo could play off the ball as well. So your front court could be D'Angelo Russell, Marcus Smart, and then you'd have Jaylen Brown at the 3, Vanderbilt at the 4, and all you need is a serviceable shot blocking defensive center. Like, you'd have shooting, you'd have playmaking, you'd have defense. I mean, just imagine a three-headed monster of Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jaylen Brown. That's really good. That might make up for the lack of defense that you're going to lose with Anthony Davis. Because Anthony Davis by himself makes us in the 20s defensively to like a top 15 defense. Like literally by himself. That's how good defensively he is. So if you were ever to make a trade for Anthony Davis, it would have to be for guys like Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. And, the Celtics, they would get a star. You almost never get a star for a star. So the Celtics, they would get a star in Anthony Davis, and the Lakers would get a star in Jaylen Brown and a serviceable guy in Marcus Smart, right? And even if you don't get draft picks, like even if there's no picks involved, even if it's just straight Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown for Anthony Davis, it would kind of be hard to say no to that, in my opinion. Because the thing is, you get a 26-year-old two-way player that can give you 27 a game. You'd have D'Angelo Russell. You'd have Jared Vanderbilt. If you could get, like I said, a Marcus Smart, you right off the bat have one of the best defensive teams in the league. You have a go-to guy. You have D'Lo, who's another guy who can be a second or third option. All you really need is a serviceable center or just like a solid piece, right? Like if you could go get one of these centers, like maybe you could go trade for Miles Turner or something like that at some point, right? And then have him in the paint. I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas there. But in general, I mean, look, I want to keep AD. If you can add Jaylen Brown to Anthony Davis and Jared Vanderbilt, come on. Like I'm serious. Like after LeBron James, again, imagine a starting five of D'Lo, Reeves, Brown, Vanderbilt, and AD. Or you could go a starting five of like D'Lo, Brown, Vanderbilt, Rui, and AD. You'd have scoring, you'd have size, you would have defense, you'd have everything. You'd have Jaylen Brown and Jared Vanderbilt as like your point of attack defenders. That would be arguably the best we've seen in maybe the last 10 plus years. Like you're talking about two elite defensive wings that can guard and switch on multiple positions and do it elite. Like that's about as good as it gets. And then to have Anthony Davis patrolling the paint with his defensive impact, I mean, we'd probably have one of the best defenses we have seen in the last 10 years, at least, if not longer. I mean, if there is any potential to get Jaylen Brown, like I would start courting him now, but it's a real question and a real concern for the Boston Celtics. They're really going to have decisions coming up. And I've talked about this like randomly throughout this, year that I've had the channel, 10 months, even on As It Stands Sports, which was like the mother channel, the channel that I had before this channel that actually sparked this channel. I even had videos diving into like this very thing. And I talked about like, what if he becomes Lakers? And people kind of just laugh at me about it. But seriously, like now you're starting to see the cracks. Like Jaylen Brown is starting to show he doesn't really want to be there anymore. And I don't like, could he go to like a Knicks team or something like that? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. But I don't see him going to a small market. I think the pool of teams that he would want to play for are going to be very small. You're talking probably like Miami, New York, Lakers, teams like that, right? I don't see him going to like a Milwaukee or something like that. And he wants to be the guy, right? So like, would he be the guy in with the Knicks? Maybe. Would he be the guy in Miami? Maybe. It depends on what goes on with Jimmy Butler, stuff like that, in 2 years. But, if he goes to the Lakers, there's no question about he would be the guy. Like, and even if LeBron stays for a year, he's only got to ride out LeBron for a year, and then the Lakers essentially become his team. And he can show that he can be the guy. I think the Lakers make a ton of sense for him, and I think it makes a ton of sense for the Lakers. But Anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Again, this very well could be a pipe dream. It's just something I wanted to talk about. It's just funny that I talked about this the other day, and now we get these reports. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. Again, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. That doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be a Laker, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But anyway, again, love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know however you feel down in the comments below.